Thanks, John, and a pleasure to be here. It's always so great to be in rooms talking about physical activity, health, wellness, and how we can make a difference by doing big things. I started in the Chief External Affairs Officer role in October of 2019. One of the big things the first things that happened in that role, overseeing our communications, government relations, and international relations, was the decision that was made to withdraw from the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games if they were to occur in summer of 2020. So on the other side of Madison's experience, we had on a Friday night, we had been meeting about COVID. It was in mid-March. We had been meeting for, I think, 3 weeks as an executive team every morning, talking about COVID and the evolution of COVID. And our CEO on Friday night said, let's not meet over the weekend. Let's take a time to refresh, and let's reconnect on Monday morning. We've been going at this for a while. We need to pace ourselves. And then a couple things, different things arose over Friday night. Saturday morning, text message, let's get in. We need to meetings all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and by Sunday night, the decision to withdraw from Tokyo had been made, communicated, and was one of the biggest communications initiatives and activities that we ever had to manage. There was so much domestic interest, and also on the international side was a difficult decision internationally. So a lot we could spend hours talking about that. But I've been, as John mentioned, I've now been with the Olympic Committee 19 years. I've been through a number of different games. But really, I have a passion for what the Olympic movement can do for the country. And that's what inspires me every day. It's rooted in my own experience and how I was a fan of the Olympic movement, how I was inspired by the Olympic movement, both in my day-to-day life and in my athletic endeavors, and it's really shaped the course of my career. So we have amazing advocates and ambassadors like Madison that we just heard from, and it's just, I feel so fortunate to have been able to create a career out of this. I was really inspired yesterday, and it's interesting to be, I guess, the last speaker in this thing, so no pressure. I'm going to try to be fast. I should up my tempo. But I was really inspired by the West Van School Board yesterday and by the mayor of West Vancouver yesterday. I mean, you guys are really doing amazing work. And it is really inspiring to see. And we heard over the course of the sessions that have been delivered, and we heard a lot about how this is a complex problem to solve. This is not simple, and there's not one solution, and there's not one group or one partner that can deliver this on their own. This needs, and it will take a network of partners at the local, the provincial, the national level to deliver change and to really create the conditions for a healthier country by 2030, the fittest nation on earth by 2030. And so I'll talk a little bit today about what I see and what we see as the Canadian Olympic Committee's role in that. And if we could just go to the next slide first. But this is my own experience with built environments, and I was inspired by the mayor yesterday talking about the creation of spaces to perform. And this is in my neighborhood, a traditional working class neighborhood in Montreal, where over the course of the last year, they've opened 2 recreational spaces. This is a pump track down the street from my house, and then on the other side, they opened beach volleyball courts. And I was inspired one night because I was riding home from the office, and I rode by the beach volleyball courts, and they were packed. And this was probably 2 weeks after they were opened, and they were full of people. And so I said, I wonder what's going on at the pump track. And I rode down to the pump track, and there was, already, I think this had been open a week. There are kids, there's groups of kids over there, and there were people using it. And this is the experience that I see every time I go by it. There are kids on the pump track, and this is a built environment, and it's the impact of a built environment. So I was really happy to hear about that happening in West Van. And this is incredible to see cities investing in infrastructure for physical activity, which is one of the key components. I would love to see people inspired by the Olympic movement have places to participate in sport and be active. So let's talk a little bit about the Olympic Committee. If we go to the next slide, we have a purpose to transform Canada through the power of sport. And this is very much aligned to what we're talking about today. If we talk about the health of a nation, we talk about the future health of a nation being reliant on the youth of today. Transforming Canada will require us to inspire the youth of today to be active and healthy Canadians in the future. And we have a dual mission. Our first mission is to lead the achievement of Team Canada's podium success. And so this is to really support individuals like Madison on their journey to achieve their potential. And this is doing everything we can to create the environment, the conditions, the preparation for Canada's athletes to achieve their potential and meet their objectives for the Olympic Games, to be able to inspire the country, which we know they do. On the second side of our mission is to promote the principles and values of Olympism, and this is ingrained in the Olympic Charter. As a National Olympic Committee, this is a responsibility of the National Olympic Committee to deliver in the country. Now, what we've done in recent years, as of 2022, we framed that within our Team Canada Impact agenda under 3 pillars. One was podium, play, and planet. And this is really taking all of the activities that align to the Olympic values, the promotion of Olympic values, all of the initiatives in that space, and putting them in the framework that we really think will lead to an impact for Canada, to transform Canada through the power of sport. So if we go to the next slide, we can see this is how we line it up. And this is not only, when we talk about podium, it's not the podium itself, but it's pursuing a safe, an inclusive, and a barrier-free sports system, so we get more people into sport at the beginning, at the grassroots. And not only that, but we keep them in the sports system. We create a sports system that will allow them to achieve their potential at all levels. When we talk about play, that is attracting more people to play and to stay in sport. And we talk about, again, it's all related at a healthy, safe, inclusive, and fun sporting environments. But how can we get more people into sport, into organized sport? And then how do we protect the environments where people play and where we participate in sport? And so we've continued, if we can go back, we've continued to continue to refine that. And as we look at our 10-year strategy, we're really thinking, how do we use the platform of the Olympic Games very intentionally? And I think many of us would have a story about being inspired by an Olympian, by being inspired by watching something on TV. And that's, as I mentioned, my passion for the Olympic movement is rooted in that experience, that personal experience. And I hear that all the time from people in conversations I have about the Olympic movement. But there's very little strategy around how do we capture those eyeballs and translate that into action. And when we look at our membership as an organization, Canadian Olympic Committee, our members are the national sport federations. So how do we translate the platform of the Olympic movement, the amazing ambassadors we have, into driving registered members in sport federations? And we know that the physical activity is one component of inspiration, and we think there will be a lot. We know we will inspire people to be more active as well. But how can we focus a little bit on that sliver and then measure? And we talk a lot about data and tracking, and how can we measure some of our progress in using the platform to drive people into participation in organized sport, registered members, where we can then ensure that we're providing them with a safe, inclusive, fun, and barrier-free sports system as they move through it. And so we view it as all cyclical and supporting of each other. And we heard the minister talk yesterday about maybe that doesn't look like the traditional sport that we saw in the past. It could be much more unstructured, it could be less competitive, but getting people either way into a registered club, so we know there are standards for how can we provide them with safe, inclusive, and barrier-free sport. And then outside of those formal structures, we hope to continue to inspire people to just be more active, to achieve and to strive for excellence in their day-to-day lives. And we know that will happen, and that's something that's really fun. And so switching a little bit from the corporate side to the personal side, if we go to the next slide, this is my experience. This is me as an 11-year-old in the 1994 Olympic Games in Lillehammer. And this was a book report or something, I guess a report I wrote as an 11-year-old talking about Canadian athletes as heroes. And on the first page, it talks about Myriam Bedard and Jean-Luc Brassard and them as Canadian heroes. And I think the first line that I wrote is, there are superheroes that save lives, but I'm going to talk about the heroes that are Canadian athletes that inspire people. And how cool is it that now I get to create, I spend my career and I spend my day-to-day telling those stories of those Olympic heroes. But this didn't inspire me to go be a biathlon athlete. It didn't inspire me to go do freestyle. I never did any of those sports. I think Elvis Stojko was the other one. But it did inspire me generally in life. It inspired me. It created heroes of these athletes for me. And then if we go to the next slide, a few years later, when I was about 14, 15, I was a track and field athlete. If we go back the slide, I was a track and field athlete. This is the story that resonates with me the most about my Olympic experience. The many of you in this room, some of you might remember 1996, Donovan Bailey, Bruni Surin, Atlanta 96. It was an iconic night at track and field. I was, I think at this point, and I would have been 13-year-old, I remember watching and saying, I need to go for a run. I was sitting in front of the television. I said, I need to go for a run. And I got up and I went for a run. I ran around the block. There was a loop around the block that I did. And I came back and I sat down and I watched the next round, or I watched another athlete. I said, I didn't run for long enough. I got to go for another run. So I went, and this is ingrained in my memory. And we can use the platform to get people to move. It can be done. We have to think about it. We have to give. We have to partner with people to allow them to use the platform to get people to move. Some of that can be formal, but I would argue that a lot of it doesn't have to be. And we have parents in the room today. We have the Paris Olympics coming up. I'm wearing a piece of the podium, a piece of the uniform that you're going to see 345 Canadian athletes wearing this summer. You and your individual households can use that as a moment to inspire and to create a time to create physical activity for you, your family, your friends. You can use it as a moment to inspire. So we will build a structure around this. We will try to be strategic and intentional, but I think every Canadian can use the Olympic Games as a moment to drive physical activity in their networks, and I would use that as a call to action. So for me, my path did not lead to the Olympics as an athlete. It led to a degree in sport business, and then a career in sports administration, but it did lead me, if you go to the next slide. Next slide. Oh, I took it out. Okay. It did lead me to a career where now Bruni Surin, who's our chef de mission for the Paris 2024 Games, is now a colleague. And so I was able to meet my heroes literally and now work with my heroes on a day-to-day basis. So now we can go to the next slide. My big reveal didn't work. I grew up in a before the digital age. I did not grow up with a cell phone. I did not grow up with laptops and computers. But this is, I pulled these images from my family group chat. This is my nephew, my 3-year-old nephew, at a Point Claire Aquatic Center event where they ran a mini Olympics last week. And all the kids participated in all the different sports. This is in the digital age. This can still be done. The Olympics can still inspire, I think, youth to get physically active in a digital world. This is an example of what it looks like to have someone who's in no structure, no system, leverage the platform of the Olympic Games to inspire youth. And it made me so happy to see. And then to go full circle again on the personal side, we've talked a lot about generational physical activity and the importance of generational. So if we go to the next slide, this is my family in the, I guess, 80s, at that point in time, 90s maybe. My parents inspired us to be physically active. We ran as a family. We did West Island run events, and these are the plaques we did. It was a series of events. But this is last November, and the result of a 22-kilometer hike I did with my 77-year-old father. And this was me pushing him to the top of this hill. Has been on his bucket list for 30 years. And we started out on an 8-kilometer hike to a lookout, and I said, why don't we just keep going? And now at 77, he got to the base of the bucket list item for him. It did almost kill him, I think, but he made it. And so this was an 11-hour, a 22-kilometer hike as a 77-year-old, and he continues to inspire me because this is something that he pushed his limits at 77 to, check a bucket list item off of his list. And now he's shown me what I should be doing at 77. And so pretty inspirational. And so again, the call to action, all of us in this room, I think, can inspire the youth. It doesn't have to come from the Olympic movement. It can come from us. It can come from us pushing our limits. And I would encourage all of you to see what that means for you and the influence you can have on the youth around you. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the panel discussion.